grow these things, and fresh shipments can sometimes only happen twice a year to some of these areas. So how do you get those vitamins and nutrients? Well, you can rely on belugas. Earlier on I did mention that belugas have a lot of blubber or fat on their bodies, up to 40%, and as you see them moving around both above and below the water, you'll definitely see that wiggling and jiggling. A great example in front of me. And that blubber actually contains the same vitamins and nutrients that we would find in our vegetables and fruit. So that's a great thing for the diet of humans that live up there. But to hunt an animal just for one body part would be extremely wasteful and disrespectful to the animal. So Inuit make sure that nothing goes to waste, and they use every part of their body after a hunt. So their skin can be used for clothing items or things like shoelaces, but all the way down to their bones it can be used for tools. So they make sure, as I said, they respect the animal and nothing goes to waste. Earlier on I asked you, what do you think, Gerald? What do you think when you hear the word Arctic? And a lot of people thought cold and ice, and it is that ice that makes us feel like it's a really challenging environment to live in. But it's actually the opposite. The ice brings life to the Arctic. It shapes what the Arctic is today. Because underneath the ice is something very important. It's called sea ice algae. It is a plant that only lives underneath that sea ice, and it is food for invertebrates like isopods, shrimp, krill, that sort of thing. And those invertebrates are food for things like fish, and guess who in this habitat may enjoy a fish or two from time to time? Julie. Phil, yes. But we have seen belugas eat food as well. Food, most specifically fish, as well. So you can see how that ice is integral for the food chain that's up there. But the ice has been changing lately. What's been happening to the ice in the Arctic? It's been melting, that's right. Researchers have been watching it very closely and have been noticing at the end of each summer the ice is smaller and smaller. It's melting a little bit longer in the summer and taking a little bit longer to freeze back up in the winter. And we know that can have an effect on the food chain, as we learnt about earlier on. So how is this happening? Well, scientists are indicating that climate change is the contributor to this rapid change in the Arctic, that melting of the ice. And how we contribute to it is actually daily. It's something that you may not realize. But every time we use energy, and I'm not talking about running around, I'm talking about every time you drive a car, use electricity, that sort of thing, we emit carbon dioxide emissions out into our atmosphere that surrounds the globe. What's happening is those carbon emissions are actually getting trapped into the atmosphere, and it's forming a blanket around it we refer to as the carbon blanket. And as it gets thicker and thicker, the world as a whole is getting warmer, and that's why we see that melting effect up in the Arctic. When we think about the biggest contributors to climate change, it's not really the small communities that live up in the Arctic. It's generally larger cities that do contribute to it the most. Yes, that's very impressive. Sheila's demonstrating right now how comfortable she is in all parts of the habitat, including the shallowest part of our habitat. And I want you to remember about that because I will be referring to it a little bit later on. I was talking about how larger cities are usually the biggest contributors to climate change. My pop quiz to you right now is, what are the two largest cities in Canada? One starts with T, Toronto. The other one starts with M, Montreal. You got it. And near those cities, not right next to, but quite close, is the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and there's actually a population of belugas, roughly 1,000, that live there, and they are facing many challenges too, though climate change doesn't seem to be their biggest challenge. Humans that live there also rely on the belugas, but it's not all humans, it's a small portion, and it's not for vitamins and nutrients, it's more economically. How? Well, there's some whale watching companies that are out there, and they have a lot of people paying big money to see maybe what you see in the front. And if you go on one of these whale watching boats, you might see something.